Now, for a little while, I've had a few people asking me about motion in Elite Dangerous. And just recently, one chap reached out and asked if I would do a video tutorial on getting motion working for Elite Dangerous. Now, there's a couple of different options here, but I think the most well-rounded package, at least from my experience that I've used, is Sim Racing Studio. Now, Sim Racing Studio used to be my go-to for software driving the motion rig for years. But of late, I just don't know why their motion software isn't as good as it used to be. And it's certainly been problematic in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Real jerky motion, and it just hasn't been functioning as well as it used to, or I guess as I was expecting it should. There are alternatives. We've got SimHub. We've also got Departed Reality's Sim Manager, plus there's also FlyPT, and there's also another bit of software that'll pull telemetry out of games and do some fancy magic called, well, I love the name from this guy, Fart Games Space Monkey. Now, Space Monkey is not motion software, but it is software that's going to help you get motion from software like Wreckfest 2, like Cyberpunk 2077. There's a whole myriad of games on there. You might have even seen my Mech Warrior video in the motion rig. That was using the Space Monkey's interface to get telemetry out of it. Now, they used to have a function in Space Monkey for Elite Dangerous. I checked recently and it's gone. So that's not going to be in the video for today. And it's a shame because I was wondering if I could get that working to interface with SimHub. Now, I've been on the SimHub Discord and had a look. Looks like some others are asking questions about it too. And I'm going to put a post on there once I do this video to see if we can get some momentum and interest in that. Now, my preference for motion would have to be either Departed Reality's Sim Manager or SimHub. Those two pieces of software are really at the forefront when it comes to motion systems, in my belief. Sim Racing Studio has really dropped down, and I've never really used FlyPT, which is another piece of software that until recently I thought had kind of been mothballed, but the developer has chimed in and said, no, he's actually in full swing and he's fully developing that again. So that is another one that I might look at in the future. But when it comes to Elite Dangerous, I believe that it will only fully function, and I say fully because we've got not just spaceships, but we've also got the SRV in Sim Racing Studio and FlyPT. Now, I haven't tested FlyPT, so we'll just park that to the side. But in Sim Racing Studio, you can have full motion in a spaceship, landing on planets, boosting, and you could tell from the beginning of the video how crazy boosting in this thing is. It is next level. Plus, when you deploy in the SRV, man, it is incredible coming out of the hull of the ship, landing on the planet, going over all the rocks. It is just an incredible sensation. So hopefully this is going to help you understand what's going on, how to get it working, also how to get your butt kickers working or your haptics, because there is no native input for that stuff. And hopefully this might help drive SimHub or any of those other software platforms to be able to get it working for everything. Doesn't work at all for SimHub as far as I'm aware, and in Departed Reality's Sim Manager, it's only working for flight. So I think that's a bit of a letdown. Hopefully they can develop that further and get the SRVs working, because that is a huge part of the game. Being able to deploy in VR in an SRV is just an incredible sensation. So let's get into this video and check out motion in Elite Dangerous. This is wicked. Right, first bit of the magic is Sim Racing Studio. I used to rave about Sim Racing Studio, but of late, I really think it's dropped the ball. I'm sorry, Sim Racing Studio, but it just has. And the only time I use Sim Racing Studio now is for Elite Dangerous. So if you are looking for how to get this working, this is what you're going to want to use. You're going to need the Sim Racing Studio software. You're going to need a paid subscription license so that you can have all the bells and whistles. And that's what this software looks like here. Once you've got that software, you're pretty well good to go. There have been updates in the past that have broken the motion with Elite Dangerous through Sim Racing Studio, but for the most part, I have had no issues for the last probably 2-3 years. So once you've got your Sim Racing Studio software, you're going to want to jump onto their motion profiles page. Again, links to all of this stuff will be in the description. And on their motion profiles page, you'll see that there's two lots of profiles. There's motion profiles non-actuator, and that's going to be things like the DOF reality systems or the Your VR, or then you've got motion profiles actuator. So make sure you're choosing the appropriate ones for your rigs. I'm running the eRacing Labs motion system, so I have got an actuator. So So let's jump in there and then let's scroll down until we get to Elite Dangerous. And here it is. We'll jump in and have a good read through all of this. This also talks about how you can configure multiple profiles if you're wanting to have lots of different spacecraft profiles. I'm really happy with running 2 profiles, and it will auto detect if you're in the SRV, and it will auto detect if you're in the spaceship. So there are 2 different tunes that we're going to do, or at least show you for today, for getting all of this working. Now this XM file with the new memory pointers, basically what's going on here is, in essence, years ago, you had to make sure that you disabled the updates, otherwise it could break the XML file, which is basically giving pointers for what should function as telemetry, because there is no actual telemetry in Elite Dangerous that can be fed to the motion system. And I used to turn this off, but I'll show you today, I have not had this set to no for several years now, and I've had no problems. So follow these instructions. You're going to want to go to Documents, Sim Racing Studio 2.0 folder. So if we open up our folder, we're on Documents, scroll down until you see the Sim Racing Studio 2.0, open that up, and you'll see we've got some Elite Dangerous offsets in here. Now what they're talking about with that config file is this file here. Open that up with Notepad, and if we actually look for the check underscore ed underscore updates equals yes, this is where you can set that to no. I have had mine set to yes for the last couple of years. There's been no breaks, no issues. It's perfectly fine. So your mileage may vary, but for now, you can pretty much just leave all of this. If you download Sim Racing Studio and follow their instructions for getting that all working, you should pretty much have motion. So let's now minimize all that stuff and scroll down to the important bits and pieces, which is your platform tuning. I'm not going to deep dive into this, but read through all of this. If you're unfamiliar and you've never used Sim Racing Studio before, by all means, ask me some questions in the comments, or by all means, flick me an email. But if you've been using Sim Racing Studio for some time, this will be familiar territory. So one of the most important things to point out though is this, if no sway actuators. So if you don't have any actuators going side to side to give you that motion of sway, or actuators to make you slide forward and back, this is pretty damn important. It can get pretty violent if you don't adhere to what they are saying here. Now, I have tweaked one a little bit further, but just bear those points in mind. It also talks about actuator sizes and mounting, some D-box stuff and that. But let's get down into the tuning, and we've got Jeff Weaver to thank for this. He's done the tuning stuff here. And if you follow this to the letter, you are going to be golden. All right, so we're not going to deep dive here, but I have made some tweaks to give me a bit more motion and a bit more, make the motion a bit more aggressive, I guess, when I'm boosting. We'll keep going down, and here's the SRV tuning. So follow this to the letter. Links will be in the description for all of this stuff, and then you should be golden. Okay, so minimize that. Let's open up Sim Racing Studio, and we'll go to Motion, and you'll see it's already detected Elite Dangerous because I am actually in game, just paused, and I'm in the spaceship. So I've got all my settings set exactly as Jeff Weaver's shown here, but I have tweaked them just a little bit. So his is a good baseline to start from, but I've actually got my surge for acceleration and deceleration just knocked up a bit, and that is what's giving me that really aggressive kickback, or that really aggressive sort of lurch forward when braking. I really like that feeling. And then when we get down into here, make sure the smoothing effects are set as the same, and you should be having a good time. Now, the other bit of the magic is there is no audio to haptics like we have with SimHub and those other bits of software out of Elite Dangerous. So you're going to want to run some software called Voicemeter Potato or Voicemeter Banana. Pretty much the difference between those two bits of software is the number of channels that you can have. So I'll open up Voicemeter Potato, which is what I'm running, and what this does is allows you to have 2 audio channels or 2 audio outputs. So your butt kickers, right, coming out of your motherboard or coming out of an audio source, and also your monitor speakers, your headphones, or whatever the audio source is for you to hear with, fed into a single output or input. And what that does is combine those 2 sounds. Now, ideally, you'd have a amplifier or 2 amplifiers that have low pass and the ability to tune that low pass frequency. That's going to help you get rid of any of the voice audio coming through your butt kickers and really just give you the deep rumble of engine vibe, engine thrust. And man, going through the mail slot on some of the outposts and stations is incredible. As you come through that mail slot, just the thudding vibration is just incredible. So I won't deep dive too much into Voicemeter Potato or Voicemeter Banana, but in essence, what we've got is my virtual input. Here, this column, I'm using Voicemeter Augs. We set our audio on the computer to be Voicemeter Augs. All right. Then what we've got is our hardware out. Now my speaker's Realtek USB 2.0 audio. That's my butt kickers. And the reason that I've got WDM set as the butt kickers, and then if we go to A2, I've got my headphones set to MME, is I'm using two different drivers in the computer to feed the audio. I find if I separate the drivers for one device to the other, it helps with latency and stops crackling. So if you're having any issues with that, just separate those. Use WDM for either butt kickers or your headphones or speakers, and use the other for the other, being your butt kickers or your headphones. So separate those channels. So now with those selected, pretty much Voicemeter Potato is receiving those two channels. It's receiving my headphones and it's receiving the butt kickers, and it's outputting them to my computer as that AUX input. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions, and if you get stuck, punch it in the comments, flick me an email and I'll help you with it. Now we've got our butt kickers, we've got our motion. Let's get into the game. And here we are, we're in the ship. So you can see we've got motion, pitch forward, pitch back. We can roll left, roll right. And we're going to go for a planetary landing, and entering the atmosphere is one of the coolest sensations. So just rotate around here, and we have got a planet lined up. There she is. And the sensation of, I guess, atmosphere going over the airframe as you're coming in for that planetary landing is incredible. I have never in my life experienced that sensation, and gosh, it would be cool to have a real astronaut fly in Elite Dangerous in the sim setup to give us their feedback, because I don't think anyone on Earth can actually know if that's what it feels like unless you've been out to space. The feeling of being in space, and the airframe right now feels really, I guess, weightless is the best way to describe it. And as soon as we enter that atmosphere, there is actually a physical change that occurs, and you start to feel like you've got resistance on the airframe. Now, the other thing I am running, although it's not specific to this video, is I'm running the VP Force Rhino force feedback base. Benefit there is there's a little dial wheel just down here, so I can actually dial up the spring force and dial it back. There is no force feedback output from Elite Dangerous for the stick, but I love that I can, on the fly, adjust the spring force. So let's thrust on a bit. Okay, orbital flight's on, and you can even see there, if I accelerate and decelerate, you can see the rig moving back and forward. So just that change in throttle is really well correlated through to the rig. Now I do have an issue where my landing gear seems to be engaging when I go into orbital cruise, so just ignore that. I need to fix it. I'm just lazy, haven't got around to it yet. Doing too much other VR stuff. Now normally I'd be in VR. I am on the big Samsung 55-inch ARC monitor, which is glorious. It's just easier for doing these instructional videos, but normally VR in the motion rig is just sensory overload. Okay, so let's focus on our landing here. We should be entering orbital flight in a minute. Here we go. All right. And I am really feeling that through the rig. I'm feeling a lot of vibration. There's the silly landing gear that I told you about. Oh, and I'm getting some pretty heavy vibration through the rig now. Almost some clunking. Oh, in correlation to the, it feels like turbulence. Whoa. Okay, and that's us coming out of, that orbital entry is pretty wild. You get thrown forward in the seat, and different atmospheres, different planets affect you differently, I find. Some planets can be more aggressive, I guess, if they've got a heavier atmosphere as opposed to others. Okay, so now that we're in the atmosphere, let's actually show you some of the other cool features. So the reason I have that surge cranked right up for acceleration and deceleration is, watch this. We're going to go boost. Hang on. That's almost as terrifying as a carrier launch in DCS, Digital Combat Simulator. It's so violent. All right, so we're going to bank right, we're going to pull back, and we're going to boost. Woohoo! Wow, absolutely spectacular. So we'll back off the throttle there. We're going to slow right down. Come to a complete stop. And you might have just detected the rig just lightly sort of rock back into its resting position. So now we'll thrust forward and just focus on the sim rig. Here we go, thrusting forward. So just a really light rock back in the rig. Nothing too aggressive there, and then we just slowly equalize as we reach our maximum cruising speed, and it just levels out. And if we back off, did you see how the rig just tilted forward slightly? So it's giving us that sensation of inertia. We're actually feeling that sensation of de-acceleration and tipping forward. And because my harness is restrained to the floor, basically a frame that I built on the floor of the rig with some elastic strapping, it really gives me that sensation of inertia and rocking forward. So we're now going to boost from a standstill. So here we go. We're going to boost. Man, that is violent. That is just so violent. All right, so let's put it down. Let's put it down for a landing. But before we do, I'll show you thrusting. So this is, I think, one of the biggest things that makes such a difference in the motion rig, especially in VR, for a sensation of flight and movement. So if we thrust down and then release, did you see the rig then? Focus on the rig. I'll zoom in the videos that I'm showing you, but watch what happens to the rig when we thrust down. And then I let go. So as soon as we thrust down, the rig goes down. I'm getting that sensation of dropping, and then when we release, the rig just sort of jolts back up, and it's really fine, but it's enough to trick the brain and give you that sensation. So thrusting down and release, thrusting down and release. Same when we thrust up. So we're going to thrust up now. Okay, we're thrusting up and release, thrusting up and release. Oh, didn't engage. There we are, thrusting up and release. Now we'll thrust left and right. So thrusting left and release. And there's just a very slight roll to the left and then that jolt back again. So we're thrusting left and release. And the same when we thrust right and release. And we'll thrust right and release. So it's just enough to trick the brain, and that sensation is incredible. So let's get it down on the ground. We'll get some landing gear down. We're thrusting down now. Butt kickers are rumbling. I've got all those sensations happening. It is such an incredible place to be. Right, let's see if we can find a good spot for touchdown. And really focus on the rig when we do finally touch down on the ground, because that sensation of touchdown is quite immersive. So we'll see if we can find a level or a reasonably level place, and watch the rig, watch all the motion happening as I'm thrusting down and making these fine adjustments. I'm really getting motion feedback through the rig. It's so immersive. All right, unsuitable terrain. Let's see if we can find something here. Oh. I really should have thrust forward, thrust back, but I don't at the moment. There we go. Okay, so we've got an alignment. We're coming down. So watch what's going to happen to the rig as we touch down here. Right, touching down. Here we go. Whoa. Wow. I actually felt all of the feet slowly touch down on the ground and a real thud as we've landed. So let's get into the SRV and go for a blast around the planet's surface. All right, switching to SRV here. All right, get ready for it because you actually feel yourself coming out of the hole. Whoa. Okay, here we go. Get mouse out of the way. Yeah, we're about to thud as we drop onto the surface. It's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. All right. All right. Let's go over some bumps and we'll show you what I'm talking about. Whoa. Here we go. It is just such an incredible sensation, and especially in VR. So in VR, the sensation of driving over this, the sense of scale is, it's just incredible. It adds a whole new element of exploration that is just, I have no words. I could just spend hours exploring these craters in the motion rig in VR. It's just incredible. Okay, and we'll thrust. So we're going to go thrusters now. Here we go, and watch as we touch down. The sensation. Even as I'll do another thrust mid-air. So we'll thrust, release, and then thrust again. Oh, there's just these little subtle feelings through the rig. It is just incredible. It's just the best. Whoa! Whoa! Man, it is amazing. There was this one time, my brother-in-law Mick, he's got a motion rig pretty much the same as me, and well, I guess his motion rig is the same. He's got the slightly newer model from eRacing Labs, the RS Plus, and my other mate Brad, and we were in a crater like this, and we were all cruising up the face of it, and they couldn't understand why I was taking so long to follow them. And I'm like, guys, I'm in a motion rig. You don't understand what I'm having to endure. And it wasn't until my brother-in-law got a rig as well that he realised, he's like, dude, how you are doing what you're doing in that motion rig is crazy. So isn't that just the coolest? All right, so let's get back in the mothership, and we'll get off the planet so you can see what that looks like, and we'll engage the Supercruise and give you a bit of a look at what's going on with motion there. So, going to try and board the ship here. All right, handbrake's on. Let's get on the ship and watch what happens to motion when we clunk up into the hull. Oh, it is absolutely wild. What they've done to get motion out of the game with these pointers, as there isn't proper telemetry, is just epic. So, all right, let's start her up. We've got the butt kickers rumbling. We've got everything ready to go. Here we go. Focus on the motion. And we have taken off. And you really feel that sensation of disembarking from the planet. So let's get the landing gear up. And let's thrust on. We're going to boost. What a beautiful view. Okay, so let's get rid of that mass lock. We'll boost again. We'll get ourselves to a point where we can engage the frame shift drive. Okay, mass lock is off. All right, so we've already got our toggle up, and okay, frame shift drive is charging. Let's align with target. And it's just nice and smooth. It'll just rock us back, and then we'll enter. Here we go. Oh, it's just, the butt kickers rumble, the rig just melts back. You just feel like you're in the seat. It's just amazing. It is just special. And the rig will slowly level out there as we're slowly starting to make our way through those different moments of acceleration and speed. Okay, so we're also going to get our Hyperjump, and we'll see what we can get happening here. All right, so we've got a location locked in. We are going to engage Hyperdrive. All right, here we go. We're going to align with target. The vibrations of the frame shift drive charging are just incredible through the butt kickers. And did you see the rig just level then? Here we go. And we are away. A little bit of a jolt. And now you watch when we come out of Hyperjump, it's really cool. So just a really nice little jolt there as we've come out. Bit of a fuel scoop. Man, absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Hopefully you got something out of this video and it's helped you either decide that you want to get a motion rig so you can be doing Elite Dangerous, or how to get it working if you've already got a motion system. If you've got any questions, whack it in the comments, flick me an email. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video.